Welcome to the Hawkins Observer, a podcast where two half-lifelong friends recap and analyze every episode of Stranger Things as we prepare for the release of the final season this November.
As always, we'll give you a scene-by-scene recap, discussing the plot and developments, as well as sharing our thoughts, memories, and reactions.
In this episode, we pick up where we left off 2 episodes ago as we rejoin the story already in progress back in Hawkins. We realize just how high the stakes are for what's going on there as we meet back up with Hopper, Bob, Joyce, and the kids as the demo dogs encroach on the town. Will takes a few naps in between all of the action, and we kind of forgive him for that.
So put in an earpiece, watch from inside a closet if you're scared, and join us for Season 2, Episode 8, The Mind Flayer.
The Mind Flayer. I'm going to be leaning in close because this episode's so scary. And I'm in a public place and I don't want to talk very loud. So this is serving 2 purposes.
All righty. Well, before we get going, please, if you're watching this, just give us a like, a comment, and subscribe to the Hawkins Observer podcast so that you don't miss anything. Season 5 is coming upon us, so you better hurry up with your rewatches. Join us along the way. All right, Scene 1. We are in the lab. From where episode 6 left off, we see Hopper and Dr. Sam are standing at the glass wall separating the portal from the control room as demo dogs reach up from the deep. A demo dog climbs out and looks directly at them as Dr. Sam says, "Mother of God." It bangs against the glass several times, and Dr. Sam kind of unconvincingly says, "That's polycarbonate. It can't get through." The demo dog steps back and roars upward as many more demo dogs appear from the kind of elevator shaft. And the fat man at the control panel says, "Mother Mary and Joseph," as if he's finishing what Dr. Sam had said. All of these new demo dogs all pound the glass and it starts to fracture and break. And Hopper says, "Are you sure about that glass?" And Dr. Sam hits the alarm button and we hear the alarm throughout the whole lab, the alarm we've heard several times. Bob and Mike hear the alarm from wherever they are in the lab, and they realize what's going on. Mike says, "We're too late." And Joyce says, "What's going on?" He says, "We're under attack." The control room clears out and Hopper shuts the massive vault door behind them. Hopper and Sam take the stairs, but the others take the elevator. They all get in the elevator. The people we don't know. And in Will's room back in the lab, Mike suggests that they tranquilize Will because he's the spy. Will protests strongly and says, "He's lying. He's lying." Back at the elevator, the doors open now on a new floor wherever they were going, and we see the demo dogs have just absolutely gotten the folks there and are feeding on them as the guards approach the elevator and see what's happening. They open fire on the dogs, but there's no effect at all of their weapons. Back in Will's room, Bob says, "Those are gunshots." And Will continues to scream, "He's lying." Joyce grabs him and says, "Do you know who I am?" "Will, who am I?" Will looks at her and it takes some time deciding. Wide eyes, Joyce repeats the question, and Will finally says, your mom." And Joyce says to Bob, "Hold him down." And Joyce injects him to put him to sleep. Hopper and Sam enter Will's room as they see demo dogs breaking through the doors in the hallway. Hopper picks up Will after he's fallen asleep, and they escape to a security room upstairs somewhere with cameras. On these cameras, the TVs, they see the various places in the lab where all the dogs are just roaming around and killing anybody who's left. The lights flicker and finally go out in the entire lab as the camera pans out from the lab and the dogs are heard screeching from the distance inside. Opening credits.
Okay, so in so many ways, this episode just doubles down the intensity. Just now there's a definite more violent breach from the upside down to the real world. It's interesting how religious everybody gets when they're under attack, though. A lot of weird
But
calls
just
to
say Bible characters' names.
Paul, Saint Peter, and the brother of Jesus. Yeah, very
Yeah.
strange. It's interesting that uh Hopper and the doctor pretty much only survive because they weren't running for the actual exit. They were running to go to Will's room. Like, had
Yeah.
they run with everybody else, they probably would have met their fate. And it's sad. It's not the first time we've seen a bunch of people die on that elevator. It's kind of a bit of a bad omen to hop on that elevator when you
Yeah.
really need to get away. Um, and once again, little Will Byers as an actor, that kid just you could tell his mind is split in every second, especially when his mom is questioning him, "Who am I?" And you could see it in his eyes. He's just reaching for who she is, fighting his mixed, consciousnesses between himself and however the mind flayer has possessed him. It's just so creepy. And if he basically outs himself when he starts yelling, he's lying, because that's not something you would say if you were
Yeah.
being defensive in that moment. So
Yeah.
yeah, man, what an opening scene.
Yeah. And the lab is kind of screwed because these demodogs have now taken over. All right. We cut to a street, um, presumably in Hawkins. A truck pulls up to a house. We recognize it as Billy and Max's house. And these two parents that we've not met yet get out and they go inside, um, yelling that they're home. The mother goes into Max's room and she finds that her window is open and her skateboard is still there, and Max is not. Billy on the other side of the hallway is listening to very loud rock music, smoking and looking at himself in the mirror. He even winks at himself as he applies hairspray and cologne. Um, the mother knocks on the door, and Billy calls her Susan. So not his mom, or at least he calls her by her first name. And the dad screams at him to open the door. He does open the door, and they ask where Max is. Billy says he doesn't know, but I'm sure she's fine. He says maybe she just went to the arcade. The dad follows Billy back into his room and says that Billy was supposed to watch her. And Billy says that, well, since you're 3 hours late and, I have a date. So the dad calls him homophobic slur, we'll say. And Billy yells that if Max ran away, that's on her, and she shouldn't need a full-time babysitter. He ends this little tirade to his dad with, "She's not my sister." And that's all dad needed to hear. He snaps and just throws Billy hard against the closet door and says very quietly and ominously, "What did we talk about?" Billy doesn't answer, and dad just straight up smacks him in the face. And the stepmom at the door turns away. Dad makes him apologize to Susan twice. Like, I don't think she heard you. He makes him cancel his date, calls his date a whore, and then says he's going to go look for Max as he just humiliates Billy in front of his stepmom. Um, he screams at Billy. Billy is seen with tears in his eyes as he's been made to repeat, "Yes, sir," a couple times. And finally, when dad leaves, Billy just breaks down in tears in his room.
Yeah, how interesting to meet two new characters kind of, very late in the season,
Yeah.
very late in the show as a whole. So here we are meeting two new people when we know what's going on the outside. It's like all hell's breaking loose. Um, but then we understand a little bit more about why Billy is the way he is, possibly because his dad is pretty darn strict and seems a little um evil mad, not just righteously angry. I think
Yeah.
we've talked about that in the last episode. The difference between being angry for a reason and then being angry for an evil purpose. So Billy has just seemed evil up until this point, but now we meet his dad, and his dad also seems hell bent on evil too.
Yeah. There's a humongous fracture in the relationship. And then the added element of there being a stepmom and you know, all of that. But we see this side of Billy where he loses all of his bravado in front of his dad.
Mm-hmm.
We see maybe where a lot of that comes from. All right, we cut to the railroad tracks now. Steve, Max, Dustin, and Lucas are walking on the railroad tracks towards the lab, presumably. Lucas and Dustin finally figure out between the two of them the truth that Lucas told Max everything and Dustin lied about keeping Dart. It finally comes, I mean, it's been hinted at, but they finally put it, both of them put it all together right there. They argue about whose transgression was worse. And Steve hears something kind of off in the distance and kind of goes to investigate as the two of them argue loudly in front of Max. Steve finally gets their attention and says, "Guys," they hear screeching off in the distance and they all walk towards it. Max is like, "What, are we just going towards it now?" And they realize it's coming from the lab. Lucas looks in his binoculars and sees the lab and the direction of all this screeching and says they were going home. They were going back home. Because remember, the last time we saw the kids, they were holed up in that bus
Right.
and the demo dogs ran away. Lucas is putting it together. They were going home.
Yep. It's interesting that Steve, so far in this past like episode or two, he just hasn't questioned Dustin hardly at all. It seems like that way because when Dustin brings up, well, I think Steve brings up a cat, but you know, Steve just assumes everybody knows Dart ate a cat, but that's when Steve find out that Dustin had not told everybody else. So
Yeah.
Steve's just kind of been going along with it the whole time, assuming that everybody knows that Dustin's keeping Dart as a pet. At least I would assume that, he thinks, oh, everybody knows about Dart. But yeah, this is when it all comes together. The lie, what lies we tell when we whatever that phrase is.
So then we cut from the kids outside the lab to now inside the lab. And demo dogs continue to just roam the hallway as Dr. Sam shows Joyce, Hopper, and Bob a map of the lab on a table and explains that since they're on lockdown, the doors are locked and they can't get out. In order to unlock the doors, someone would have to reset the breakers in the basement. And Hopper runs off to reset the breakers as if, like, well, that's just what we need to do. And Bob stops him. And Bob explains that after, he's like, what are you going to do after you reset the breakers? And Hopper says, we get out of here. And Bob's like, no, then the power comes back on. He explains that after the breakers are reset, they still can't escape because even though the power comes back on, the computer system will need to be rebooted and all the security codes will need to be manually overridden. Eventually, it becomes clear that Bob is the only one who can do this. And because he has coding knowledge, he writes basic code. So he sets off with an earpiece. Well, no, they go out of the security room and they pull a radio and a gun off of a dead guard. And he and Hopper share this little moment of how to use a gun. And Bob's going to go down to the basement to reset the breakers and undo these security codes. And Bob tells Hopper, "Don't wait for me. Just get out."
Yeah, Bob had already referred to himself as a hero either last episode or a couple episodes ago, but I don't think it's something he ever thought that he would actually have a role that he'd ever actually have to step into. And so by him saying, "Don't wait for me," that's in and of itself is a heroic thing to say. He's saying, as soon as it's safe for you all to don't wait for me, just your safety first, and then I'll figure it out for myself. So already a hero in this episode.
Yeah, and he pulls some bravery out of somewhere. He's
Mhm.
not the nerdy little Bob that we know. He's now doing something that even Hopper can't do.
Mhm.
So outside the lab, a car pulls up to the gate of the lab, and it's Jonathan and Nancy. They immediately notice that the power is out at the lab, and the gate door doesn't work. It won't open. Nancy hears rustling in the woods. They investigate the noise and quickly realize that it's Steve and the other kids, um, minus Will and Mike, obviously. They both ask about Mike and Will, and they hear screams coming from inside the lab. And they're like, they're not in there, are they? And one of them says, I hope not.
once again, such a small town. You just run into your friends and your siblings at the local lab. Like, what are you guys doing? What are you doing here? I mean, that's how small of a town it is.
Yeah,
But we're thankful that the team is building in size. We don't like
they're
for any
all
of these people to be so isolated.
yes, they are all together. Okay, so this is a long scene. Bear with us. We are
Buckle
going
down.
to Yes, we are going to go back inside the lab and join Bob on his quest to the basement to reset the breakers and to undo the security codes so that everybody can get out safely. Bob descends the stairs in the lab towards the basement. He reaches the breaker room pretty quickly and easily and is spooked as he finds a dead body. Comes right upon a guard that's been killed already and realizes what the stakes are for himself. He finds the breakers and he resets them as all the lights and the cameras come back on in the lab. And outside, the kids notice this as well. They notice that all the lights are back on. So, job one, done almost immediately. Outside, Jonathan tries the gate button again, but it still isn't working. Back inside the lab, Dr. Sam talks to Bob on the radio. He's got the security camera footage up in front of him, so he's able to guide Bob. Bob gets in the security computer and goes about resetting the codes as he unlocks doors floor by floor, remotely from the basement. The last doors he unlocks is the outdoor gate, and we see it open as the kids stand outside. Dustin thinks that he did it because he was the last one to touch the button, which is hilarious. Hopper says, the son of a bitch did it. And Bob tells them on the radio, I'll meet you outside. So all's going very well. Bob goes to leave um, the the basement. Dr. Sam sees a demo dog enter the west stairwell and tells Bob. Bob gets an idea and goes back to the computer to engage the sprinkler system at that location. And the demo dogs run away. And Sam goes, okay, that worked. And then he tells Bob to go. In the security room, Hopper picks up Will as he and Joyce. Will is still asleep, by the way. Hopper picks up Will as he and Joyce and Mike leave Sam. And Sam says to take a radio, and Sam stays in the room to guide them with the cameras. Hopper has like an AR rifle as he's got Will over his shoulder, and they run and get to the ground floor and they escape the lab. Dr. Sam guides Bob on the radio through the lab as demo dogs are still roaming everywhere. Eventually, Bob is told to hide in a utility closet to escape, coming around a corner and coming up on a demo dog. And when it's clear, after the demo dog walks away, Bob exits the security or the utility closet. But as he leaves, he knocks over a broom and it bangs on the floor. And the demo dog hears it and turns around, rounds the corner, and starts chasing Bob. Bob makes it away from it as he runs and slams the door behind him in the lobby of the lab. So there's this chase scene where Bob actually outruns the demo dog and slams the door behind him in the lobby of the lab. He sees Joyce outside the lab and stops to smile at her as though like he's made it. And he's almost out of the lab. Just then, a demo dog from inside the lobby jumps Bob and knocks him to the floor. Bob fights, but eventually it overtakes him. Shortly after, the demo dogs that were chasing him before break through the doors that he had slammed and totally overwhelm Bob as Joyce and Hopper look on helpless. Hopper is firing rounds at them from this automatic rifle, but they are totally unaffected by his gunshots. Hopper finally gets Joyce to leave as we see Bob getting eaten by the demo dogs. Bob Newby is dead. As they leave, Jonathan peels up to pick them up and they escape with Will still asleep. Outside the lab at the gates, Max realizes that cars are approaching. It's Hopper and Jonathan, and Hopper tells them to get in his police truck.
I think this was the saddest I'd ever been.
Yeah.
Both seasons combined, like nothing compared to this moment of just of sadness, of loss, of like, no, the good guys are supposed to win. I mean, okay, just recapping a little bit. it makes, I know, like they felt like time was of the essence, but it makes you wish that between Dr. Sam and Bob, they could have come up with a more systematic way to open some doors and unlock others. Maybe it wouldn't have worked because these demo dogs seem to be able to get through any door or any door they want, but it's still like we even saw him, getting creative using a sprinkler, and that seemed to work.
Yeah.
So that was amazing. Here we have our second real hero of the episode. Dr. Sam stays behind to guide the others to safety by using the television surveillance. So that's a hero move in and of itself. But yeah, the moment we see Bob get attacked, it's just it's gut wrenching. I have a gross theory. You saw that the demo dogs really like they didn't just attack him, they like decided to feed on him. And I think that's probably because he had the best heart of them all. He was just such a good guy.
Yeah. That's I like that theory.
Everyone else just gets bitten and like ptew, ptew, and they run off and go fight somebody else. But this guy,
Yeah.
they just oh, it's so graphic and gross.
Yeah.
Like, ugh.
Yeah, Bob. I mean, Bob did what he needed to do to let the others get to safety.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, didn't sacrifice himself knowingly,
No.
definitely took on the most danger.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I just remember watching it going, why would you stop in the lobby to
Yes.
just like stare off in the distance and
Yep.
like run? I don't even know that it would have mattered because that
Yeah.
demo dog that got him was from inside the lobby. He just didn't
It
see
was
him.
probably only 1 second that elapsed, but they
Yeah.
slowed it down for dramatic effect. We're
Yeah.
like, you made it. No,
Yeah.
you did it. Yeah, it
And
was
how much worse is it that it all happened in front of Joyce? Like it
poor
wasn't
lady.
like she, yeah,
Oh,
yeah. But man, how badass did Hopper look in that scene with him carrying Will on one shoulder and the automatic rifle in the other?
yeah.
Man,
It's crazy that guns like seem to do nothing to these creatures. Like just
nothing.
doesn't phase them, which is kind of
It doesn't
scary.
even like slow
They
them
don't even
down.
recoil. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's wild, wild. But then, man, we just get so many shots of Bob laying on the ground.
Too
It's like
many.
it's so many.
Too many. Thanks a lot,
100%.
duffers.
Yeah, they really just wanted us to know that Bob is not
Well,
coming back.
yeah, that's true. There's been so many questions of who's dead, who's alive. That's probably why they're like, just so you guys
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
we couldn't afford we couldn't afford this actor for a second season, so we had to kill him.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's they ate him because he's the most expensive. Man, there can be no question. Bob Newby, superhero,
R.I.P.
is dead. Man. All right, another really long scene. We'll break it up into two parts. Back at the buyer's house, right after this happens, Will is asleep still. They've placed him on the couch, and Jonathan is kind of rubbing his head and apologizing to him. Um, in the kitchen, Hopper is on the phone calling some sort of authorities. We find out later it's like military. Um, he mentions Dr. Sam Owens, which I don't know that we've heard his last name up to this point. We've just been calling him Dr. Sam, but he's Dr. Owens. And then Hopper says, I don't know how many people are left alive, talking about the lab. And then he also says, I am the police, Chief Jim Hopper. As you hear on the other end, very low, like you don't really hear it very well. It says, have you called the police? And Hopper finally gives them the buyer's phone number for a call back. Dustin, Max, Lucas, and Mike are all in the kitchen. And after Hopper hangs up, Dustin says, they didn't believe you, did they? Hopper's plan, he tells them all, is we stay here and we wait for help. And Mike is feeling much more urgent, as he generally is, or as one of the kids generally is.
Yep.
Hopper slowly goes into Joyce's room and sits on the floor with her, and she just weeps. And they say nothing. They're just sitting on the floor together, and the camera kind of pans out of the room. It's really somber music is playing. And then that same music is playing as we just pan around the kitchen table, and the kids just either stare off in the distance or they're just looking down. They're saying nothing as well. The grief now is palpable. We all get to kind of take a breath and grieve Bob here in this moment. Mike goes into the living room and picks up a brain teaser, one of the ones that Bob had brought over for Will, and tells the others that Bob was actually the original founder of Hawkins AV Club. He said Mr. Clark learned everything from him. He then says, "We can't let him die in vain." And Dustin kind of, uh, protests. Well, what do you want us to do, huh? We can't fight those demo dogs on our own. They say that there's an army of demo dogs, and Mike says, yeah, his army. Maybe if we can stop him, we can stop his army too. Mike, Dustin, and Lucas connect everything that's been happening kind of to their D&D lore that they know, and eventually realize that the shadow monster, the virus, everything is kind of like the mind flayer from the D&D guidebook. After some discussion and probing from Steve and Hopper, they don't understand. Dustin realizes that the D&D analogy actually breaks down, and they're kind of back to square one. Joyce comes in to join the discussion from the hallway finally and says, they're right. We have to kill it. I want to kill it. Hopper says, look, we don't know what we're dealing with here. And Mike says, no, but he does, talking about Will. And he looks at Will asleep on the couch. He says he knows its weakness. Their idea is to hide Will so the mind flayer can't spy on him. If he doesn't know where he is, then he can't spy on him.
Yep. Hopper definitely acts frustrated that they're using D&D as an analogy. I mean a metaphor. I mean an analogy.
Yeah.
He's frustrated that they're using that they see the whole world and interpret these problems through that lore. But in the end, especially here with Mike comparing it to what Will's capabilities are now that he's possessed, it's the key that unlocks the next step in them trying to figure out how to kill this thing. So if they didn't know this game, they may not have the proper understanding of what's going on actually in the real world.
Yeah, that's
the backwards way of saying it. If the game doesn't exist, none of this exists. But it's still interesting that here we see them again interpreting the real world through the lore of a game.
Yeah. And it is funny to watch Hopper and Steve listen to it all because they don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I know I interpret the world through a game. It's Monopoly. And I'm still in those purple things, but you know what I'm saying? Like it makes sense that you can see the whole world through a specific board game.
Yeah. So their idea then is to hide Will so that he can't spy on everything that's going on. So then immediately after they kind of make this plan, they go about emptying the buyer's shed, and they're just dumping stuff in the yard, and they're closing off all the light that could come in, and they're lining the entire inside of this with tarps and duct tape and all sorts of sheets and everything. Nancy, as they're doing this, Nancy and Steve find themselves working next to each other, and Nancy tells Steve that what he did was really cool, protecting the kids. They have a little moment, and elsewhere, Dustin and Lucas are working together, and Dustin apologizes to Lucas and says, if your girlfriend wants to replace me in the party, that's cool. Lucas is like, she's not my girlfriend. Max tells Mike what she knows about Elle and says, she sounds really cool. Like, I can see why she was your mage. But Mike's not interested in making any sort of amends with Max.
Mm-hmm.
He just wants to confirm with Max that she knows that she's not a part of their party. And the rest of them finish lining the shed to make it unrecognizable. And Hopper brings in Will, ties him to a chair in the middle of the shed. They turn on these huge bright spotlights on him, and they wake him up with ammonia, like smelling salts. Inside the buyer's house, Dustin paces back and forth past Nancy, and Steve takes batting practice with the spiked bat, like they're just waiting. Lucas and Max talk in the hallway, and Lucas assures her that Will won't find out where they are. Max is concerned about that. She says, what if they do? And Mike said, or Lucas says, Judgment Day. In the shed, Will is agitated again, asking why he's tied up. He's just furious. Joyce says they want to help him, and he screams and screams and thrashes around as the lights flicker everywhere. He eventually kind of wears himself out of all this thrashing as Hopper holds him. Joyce begins just talking with Will after he's calmed down and starts sharing stories about Will, about his birthday, about the gift that she bought him, and just starts kind of trying to connect with Will through these old historical stories. And then Jonathan joins in with his own stories about their dad and building Castle Byers together. Will is just quivering as they talk, and Mike then starts telling stories about, you know, moments that they've shared together as best friends. And we see Will begin to tap his fingers on the leg of the chair briefly. Joyce pleads to Will that if he's in there, please talk to us. If you're in there, please let us know. Please talk to us. Will stammers, but finally starts to speak, and we are all listening, and he just says, "Let me go." Doesn't appear to be getting through at all. Hopper notices from the doorway of the shed that Will is tapping his fingers, and he goes back in the house to grab a pencil and paper, and he thinks that Will might be using Morse code. He realizes that Will is actually still present and is talking to them as Will was tapping the letters HERE, as if to say, "I'm still here." So then they go back into the shed. They're playing very loud music. The "Should I Stay or Should I Go" in the shed, and continue talking to Will as he continues to tap. The rest of them remotely, because they're being given signal from a radio inside the house, they realize that as Joyce and Jonathan continue to tell stories behind this loud music, he spells out the letters CLOSEGATE, and they write it down and say "close gate." As they realize that, the Byers' phone rings, presumably a call back to Hopper from before, and Will hears it from the shed. One of them picks up the phone and puts it back down. It rings again, and Nancy just tears it off the wall, but it's too late. Will immediately realizes where he is, and his eyes close, and they begin to dart back and forth. And we see the tunnels zoom past as the Mind Flayer realizes where they are. They inject Will again, and he falls asleep in his chair. Outside, they all hear the groaning, distant yelling. One of them says, "That is not good." Hopper grabs guns from all over the house, and they all station themselves inside the Byers' house, ready to face the imminent threat as they hear growling, screeching, and chittering from outside. It's just a shot of them kind of panning around as they're looking outside. They're aimed and ready to go. It gets louder and louder. Finally, they hear whimpering, and the picture window glass shatters as a demo dog is thrown lifeless into the living room. One of them kicks it to realize that it's actually dead. The door creaks, and they all turn towards the front door, and the lock moves on its own from outside. They are aimed and ready at whatever's coming through this door. The door opens, and we see the sneakers and jeans, and pan up to see 11, still in all of her get up from before, the bad girl outfit. Hopper lowers his gun, himself realizing who it is, and then Mike comes out from behind Hopper very slowly. He and 11 stare at each other and smile with just tears in their eyes. And that is the end of the episode. Oh, good.
I'll confess, as I was just rewatching this for the first time a couple days ago, I couldn't remember how many episodes were in this season, and I thought it was the last episode as a result of that scene.
Oh, yeah.
Because I
there was
forgot
only
that there
8
was, yeah,
episodes in the first season.
right. And I knew that was 208, so I was like, what an ending. I really thought that with her walking in, it was the end of the season. So it was that momentous of an occasion. Yeah, it's again like episodes back, even a season back, all these people were just keeping lies and secrets from each other. And here, finally, the most important characters are on a team. They're all working together to save Will, to save, to fight this evil. It's in that sense, it's very uh it's very rewarding finally that they're like finally you guys are like cooperating and working together and like so that's a really key thing I think here is that everyone's in on it. They're putting most of them are able to put their differences aside like you know Steve is not really questioning Jonathan and Nancy. Why are they together so much?
Yeah.
Mike is still not willing to warm up to Max. He still is really put off by her. But even Dustin and Lucas, an apology was said, which if you're part of the team, you've got to apologize and make those wrongs right. Um, but yeah, I mean, what a great scene. Again, I would have been really happy if that was the last episode and I just would have looked forward to season three.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's fascinating that Will is literally two people in this episode. He's the spy for the Mind Flayer. And so what we see of him and hear from him is that kind of character, spy for the Mind Flayer.
Mm-hmm.
But then as Joyce and Jonathan and Mike are reminding him of who he is and through these stories, he's still kind of in there, like held captive inside of his own body
Yep.
and is doing this tapping on the chair. It's fascinating to think of that as being clandestine from the Mind Flayer.
Yeah.
Like the Mind Flayer has Will's body in some form or another, and yet Will is able to kind of sneak a message out to them. I just think that's fascinating.
Yeah.
And the
Let's
Hopper recognizes it and that he knows that what needs to be done is the gate needs to be closed. The portal needs to be eradicated.
Yeah. I mean, we could take a real deep dive into that because we've seen the psionic abilities of some of the characters using televisions, which are a type of signal or frequency wavelength. But then we see Hopper using a walkie-talkie to transmit Will's secret tapping. Some perhaps there's something about whatever frequency the walkie-talkies use, or perhaps it's such a low form of electricity that it escaped the mind flayers notice. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's you could there's probably they'll probably never explain that, but yeah, there's all sorts of we could read into it as why that worked, or why, or maybe it's a plot hole, but I don't know.
Well, and they were playing the stereo too. I mean, they had the cassette going with that music playing so loud, presumably to again mask what they were doing in there.
Yeah.
But then, Will ends up recognizing the sound of his own phone ringing.
I think that they chose to at the very opening of him being tied to the chair. I think they chose to like purposely distort his voice when he kept saying "Let me go." Did you notice
Yeah,
that
yeah,
the pitch almost dropped as if it was truly like a form of
possessed.
possession? It was just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, yeah, and what a great performance by Noah Schnapp as well. To, I mean, it's hard enough to act as a different person, but he's having to act as two different people.
Yeah, that's so true. As a
The
kid,
same
he's
scene.
being asked, "Hey, I know you've been acting like this kid will, but now we need you to act on top of that acting." That's
Yeah,
so true.
yeah. It's such a great ending of the season. Again, they all just grab weapons like that's going to stop anything, but that's kind of they felt trapped. I mean, in the house, like their position was given away,
Mm-hmm.
nowhere else for them to go. I mean, I guess presumably they could have all piled in the vehicles and tried to just outrun them, but the risk was too high
Yeah.
that they wouldn't get to the vehicles in time.
Obviously, we don't know what's going to happen next, but would it be fair to say that the Mind Flayer overestimated the power of his Demogorgon dogs because he only sent X amount, thinking that would be enough to kill everybody in that house that Will's at, and
Yeah.
then not knowing that 11 was going to show up and kill them all. Like, why isn't there? How did 11 have this moment just now to walk in so peacefully? Like, is the attack over? No.
That's a great question. And I don't know too whether or not the Mind Flayer is I don't know the origin of the the Demogorgon for that matter. We don't really know where they come from. Like, what's the genesis of a Demogorgon?
That's true.
So-
Yes, the time is now 9:08.
Did
Be advised, this phone will be closing.
Might be last call where I'm at. I'm gonna so.
Please begin to power down your electronics.
In
okay?
your Zoom,
Be aware
in your award-winning podcasts.
All right. Well, since Chris is going to hop on a plane, I think we're all just going to watch the next episode, and we'll catch you back here at the finale next time when Chris lands.
I've outed myself. I did my best to blur where I am, and I still get outed. Ironically,
It's like the phone ringing at the buyer's house.
that's true. This is the closest either of us have physically been to where the show is taped. 'Cause
Yeah.
I'm at the Atlanta airport connecting to another flight, and
There you go.
somewhere I think just south of here is where they filmed the show.
Yeah.
So
I think you're right.
I kind of wish I had a longer layover. I could go out there and investigate things for myself.
That'd be fun.
Yep. Well, I need to go see if the gate is still open for my flight, I guess.
That's great. I'm going to go watch the finale again, and we'll see all the rest of you next time here for the finale of season 2 on the Hawkins Observer.
Peace.